Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at uenradio.com.
Everyone, thank you. Welcome to Focus, a new radio talk show hosted by me, Ron Frierson, your host. Focus, let's see, we're going to be just like all of the radio talk shows that you've heard in the past, but we're also going to be a little bit different. Let me tell you how we're going to be the same. We're going to entertain you. We're going to inform you. We're going to make you better people out there. This is how we're going to be different. We're going to be different because it's going to have my own unique personality and my own unique stamp on the show. And that stamp is because that stamp was formed by me and my thoughts because I am a different personality. I am the type of person that is very international, very universal, very non-judgmental, and I like to think very fair. So when we do have guests call into the show, when we have guests that come onto the show, sometimes there may be guests that I don't necessarily agree with or guests that my core audience doesn't necessarily agree with, but I believe everyone deserves the same respect. So thank you again for joining me during this introduction. This is my intro show. So as all of these kinks are being worked out and all the wrinkles with production and my maturity process as a host is worked out, you're going to see the entire process and you're going to grow with me. Okay. So let's talk about what the premise of the show will be. Focus is intelligent talk. It's going to be intelligent talk over various topics. Topics like, let's say the Pope. Say religion, the elections, which includes Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, the entire Republican field and all that stuff. We're going to talk about the Middle Eastern crisis, things going on in the tumultuous Middle East, including ISIS and the Iran deal and things of that sort. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter, what's going on went on this past summer in Ferguson, New York, and I'm sure Ferguson and New York, and I'm sure they're still facing some of the ramifications of that and how it's affecting daily life for the people that were affected by those tragedies and police brutality and things of that sort. We're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. We're going to speak about education and the necessity that we have as a civilization to ensure that our youth are properly educated, because I do firmly believe that many of the social ills that we face today have a lot to do with our educational system. Okay, we're going to talk about ISIS. I said that before. We're going to talk about Republican versus Democrats. We're going to talk about universal health care. So my philosophy is vast and wide. My philosophy is to include a lot of different viewpoints, and I'm going to have many experts on the show, experts in all of these topics that we're going to discuss over the course of this show. This show is going to last for a season, and during the course of this season, we are going to learn something, and hopefully we'll be entertained in the process. So if we're going to talk about something first, of all the different topics that I want to discuss, let's start from what I would like to say the top. And the top right now, if you turn on the news, we're talking about the Pope. He's everywhere. And understand this is Pope Francis's first visit to the United States. And he's received and welcome that a Pope deserves. And I think this is a special Pope in regards to outside of just the gravitas that comes along with that office and with that position. I believe because he's from the Americas, I believe he was born in Argentina. And also some of the stances that he's proclaimed on behalf of the church to all Catholics, it's kind of gone in a different direction than what we have found with popes in the past. He himself has, for the most part, signed on to the, in my mind, fact that we are in a process of experiencing climate change that is man-made, and that humans are the cause of a lot of that. He's also been very non-judgmental when it comes to things like homosexuality and things of that sort. So with this religious figure, if he can show tolerance, but at the same time not compromising his beliefs, then that should be a lesson for all of us. So we can go from there. We can segue from that and go into, let's just talk about religion and politics. Now, everyone knows that we're in an election season and we have a lot of crazies out there. And one of the craziest of the crazies include Donald Trump, who simultaneously has touted his fervent religious following and his teaching, saying that I want to say he said he was an Episcopalian or something of that sort. But at the same time, he's being very judgmental towards women, the things he said about Carly Fiorina, obviously the things that he said about immigrants, documented, undocumented immigrants, and he's called them illegals. And I understand that is a term that they don't like to be called is illegal immigrants. They like to be called undocumented. So with that being said, I myself have a real problem with any politician who espouses their religious fervor a little too much. And I think that we as a population should be careful when this sort of religious test is put forth, even though it's not something that affects us politically in regards to their ability to run for office. Sometimes it does affect us psychologically in our willingness to vote for someone and to put someone in office, and that shouldn't be a test. I believe that something like that should be private, within a person's soul, within their heart, and you should look very carefully as someone who espouses religion too much. Now, I say this as a Christian. I say this as a person who believes in Jesus Christ. But I grew up in the church. I'm the son of a pastor. So all that being said, if I'm saying this, then I think there's something to it. And most of the listeners that we have out there, if you've grown up in the church, we've always had someone in the church who was fervent Christian, but you know that they were crazy. They were crazy. They were Christian and crazy. They believed in God. They were able to quote all types of biblical passages and scriptures, but they were crazy. Now, picture that person being the leader of the free world. Picture that person who's very religious, but picture that person now with power. It's scary. So that's why, in my opinion, we should not always automatically run to the person who spouts their religious fervor and use that as a test as to whether or not they should be in office. And it makes perfect sense. As a matter of fact, if we look at ourselves, and many of us should look at ourselves, if we look at ourselves closely and put our objective lenses on, then you can see that in many respects, we are what we judge others to be. Let me explain. We talk about people in other countries, not we, not you in particular, but many of us and in the media talk about people in other countries. Let's say people in Iran or people in Afghanistan, and say how the religious zealots have taken over, and they are the group that's running everything. But if we had it that way, where people like Ted Cruz were president here, what do you think those people in those other countries would say about us? They could say the exact same thing about us that we say about them. Now, thank God that we have the separation of church and state, because when you blur those lines, that's when you get people that do things out of the name of God, and later on you find out it wasn't God at all. It's just that person and their motives and their aspirations and their ambition and their desire for power. So again, do not allow your ability to think critically go out the window when someone espouses their affinity or love for God, things of that sort. Let the way they live their lives, let that tell the truth about the matter and where they truly stand. Now, going on to the next topic. Oh, feel free to call in, guys, if you guys have any questions about a show that I should hold in the future, or if you have any commentary about any of the issues that we're going to discuss today. Feel free to call in. And the number you can dial is 323-843-2826. Or you can email me at ronnie.frierson@gmail.com. Again, 323-843-2826. Or email me at ronnie.frierson@gmail.com. All right, so back to the election. My main man, Donald Trump, my man with the hair, and it's real from what I hear, and he's leading the Republican pack. This group of candidates is very interesting. I can't remember how many there are. I want to say there's like maybe 11 of them, maybe a few more. Understand that Rick Perry, the former governor of Texas, has dropped out. Scott Walker, the former governor of Wisconsin, has dropped out. And a few more will probably drop out here pretty soon because the money is drying up and there's only so many donors. Now, of all the people that should be running, those are two that held elective office. Those are two that have actually governed. And before those two dropped out, I would have expected others. I would have expected even Dr. Ben Carson or Donald Trump. I would have expected in a normal political cycle for those guys to drop out before I would have a professional politician. And the term professional politician can be looked at in a negative connotation sometimes because we think about them in their campaigning and the way they maneuver around questions when asked and things of that sort. But part of being a professional politician, if you've been elected into office, is that you have to govern. So Donald Trump, I wonder whether or not he's just interested in running, or if he understands that if he were to win, as much of a long shot as it is, if he were to win, would he be able to govern? And I wonder if the political supporters have really thought about that, thought about the way the world works, really. Now, if you govern, you have to understand that already baked into the cake, you're going to have opposition, not just domestically at home, but also internationally. Countries act by their own interests, not because they like the president. There's a lot of them that like President Obama, but don't think for a second that they don't act within their own interests because they have their own constituents in many cases to worry about. So what could you see Donald Trump going in front of the United Nations? Could you see him like really, in a real world, negotiating the Iran nuclear deal? it's hard for me to imagine that. And I have a pretty active imagination, but I don't think I could see that. Now, he can say things about the art of the deal and things of that sort, but this is the real world in regards to politics. And politics is different from business. And that's another thing we need to be careful of, is when we try to mix someone's business expertise with their ability to run a country. In business, the bottom line means everything in regards to their motives. Their motives is profits. They want to be productive, and the bottom line on the spreadsheet is what counts. And they can cut jobs, they can find efficiencies, they can do things like that. But at the end of the day, their core mission is to make a profit. That's not the case with governing people. Your core mission as an elected official is to serve the public, not in making profits. So you cannot conflate the two. Now, George W. Bush he was the first president we had with an MBA, and in many respects, people don't think he was the best president. I'm not going to say he's the worst, because I just don't like to put best or worst in anyone's resume. But a lot of people weren't happy with him, me included. And on that note, with President Bush, he was my president. I didn't agree with many of his policies, hardly any of his policies, but he was my president. And within our country, we're able to understand that people internationally may not have agreed with President Bush, but they were our allies, or they weren't our allies, whether or not they agreed with them. But we provide ourselves that nuance. We understand the comings and goings and the ins and outs and the nuances, again, of an elected official within our country, how he has a group of supporters and a group of detractors. There's interests around it, and regular everyday people have opinions about this certain person. Some people vote for him, some people don't. Now, when it comes to other countries, in many respects, we don't allow that same nuance. I wouldn't say anti, but I could disagree with George W. Bush, but still be pro-American. Now, when it comes to other countries, the way we've painted it and the way we've allowed ourselves to be, in many respects, manipulated is that we don't do the same. We don't allow for the same. So I am pro-Israel. I am. That doesn't mean I am pro-Bibi Netanyahu. Now, the way I'm not going to say the mass media, because that sounds crazy and that sounds like everyone, but the way it's commonly perceived, and it's not the right way to perceive it, is that just because you are anti-policy Bibi Netanyahu and the way he goes about doing things, that somehow that is conflated to you being anti-Israel. It's not the case. We ought to allow ourselves and others the same sort of nuance that we allow ourselves when thinking about our country and our own government. Because understand that in Israel, it's the same way. If you are or were an Israeli citizen and you're sitting in Tel Aviv or Haifa or wherever you are, there are people in your town that understand, okay, Bibi's the prime minister, but I'm sure that he has detractors. There are people that don't agree with his policy. So within the country, they're allowed that, but outside the country, if you were to say anything against Bibi Netanyahu's policies, then automatically they try to paint you with that brush. That's not wise. Whether or not you agree with his policies, that's not wise. Whether or not he were prime minister, I would still be pro-Israel, but that doesn't necessarily mean I have to agree with Bibi's policies. So understand that. So when we have our Middle Eastern experts come onto the show that carry a lot of different, opinions about certain topics within the region, some may agree with me, some may not. We're going to think about these things with nuance. We're going to think about these things with objectivity, and hopefully that we'll all be enlightened in that regards. So we're going to go to break really fast, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the stuff going on with Hillary Bernie Sanders and the election season, and then we're going to jump right back onto the Iran deal because I have some things I want to say about that. All right, so we will come back with Hillary or Bernie. Don't forget to call me at 323-843-2826. Again, 323-843-2826. Also, you can these are the things that happened the first show. We're going to go to break now. Thank you. Thank you again for joining me on Focus with Ron Frierson. This is our first show, and you can get all of the first show scars, all of the first show jitters, all of the warm-ups that come with the first show, all of the glitches that come with the first show. We're going to show ourselves raw right now, and we have been. So hopefully as the show matures and I mature, this will be the highlight of your Friday. We're going to be on every Friday at 5 p.m., from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. here on UBN Network. Okay, again, call me at 323-843-2826. Understand that we had a call come through? Okay. So let's talk about this. Now, before we went to break, we said we were talking about the election, and we're going to stay there for a minute because I want to get on this whole Hillary and Bernie Sanders thing on the Democratic side. But before we go there, I wanted to say a little bit about President Obama and the things that he has had to deal with during the course of his presidency. And I know I forget that I'm on TV as well, so you can see me, and I never look at the camera. Hey, everybody. Uh, um, well, with President Obama, the things that he's dealt with in regards to his citizenship, in regards to whether or not he was born in the United States or born in Kenya, whether or not he's a Muslim or Christian. This is different. Now, negative advertising has been going on forever. If you remember the 2000 campaign between George W. Bush and John McCain, there were rumors put out by some of the Bush people that McCain's had an illegitimate daughter with a black woman and things of that sort, and it comes out that he just has a foster daughter who happens to be African American. But these ugly things have happened in the politics within our country's history, largely due to the bad things that occurred when this union was being formed, and we're still paying the price for that to this day. So in regards to President Obama, this is what I have a problem with in that whole birther nonsense. Anyone who's held any sort of office that has access to secrets, access to confidential information at the national level, let's say, within military and things of that sort, they know that they are vetted heavily vetted. I have a childhood friend who is in the intelligence community. Let's say that much, and I don't see him very often because he's off doing his job and working and things. But we're close and we're friends. We speak on the phone. A childhood friend. He's known me since I was 2 years old. Well, when he got promoted within this intelligence agency that he works for, they came and interviewed me, because my name popped up as someone that grew up with him, and they were asking me all types of questions, personality questions about him. How was he, and this, that, and the other, and what do we speak about to this day? And this was for just an intelligence official. And they were doing all these background checks on him and things of that sort. And I'm sure some of the listeners who have been in the military before, they understand the same information that has to be divulged about them and their past and things of that sort. Do you think it would be any less for the man who has the potential of launching a nuclear bomb? Do you think it would be any less for a man who will represent this country on a global scale? All of these different senators and representatives, they know, because they had to go through this vetting system themselves, because many of them are exposed to national security secrets. And there's no way they're going to be exposed to national security secrets. There's no way they're even going to be allowed to run for office if they don't pass through these certain background checks. So they know these rigorous vetting procedures that take place at that level. So they know beforehand that, all that being said, if for whatever reason the president was ineligible, or at the time candidate Obama was ineligible because of his birthright, or if he was truly, of a different faith or something, then it would be public knowledge, or they would know. He wouldn't be allowed to run for office. He wouldn't be allowed to run probably for Senate if you are born out of country. I'm not sure. I know for presidency you have to be born in the United States. It may be different in the Senate. But if that were the case, it would be well known. So that means that these politicians knew that, but at the same time, they allowed that nonsense to be put out there. And you know why they were able to do that? It's because they are depending upon the electorate, the people, to be dumb enough to go for it. They need dumb people. Now, not everyone that votes for a certain person is dumb. I'm not saying that at all. Okay? There are intelligent people in all stripes, just like there are dumb people of all stripes. And when I say dumb, I mean this. I mean common sense. It's common sense. So all that being said, it's almost a crime that these different politicians including candidate Trump, and some of these others who have gone through and said these things about the president either being, they say stuff that will contradict themselves. Let's just remember the whole Reverend Wright deal. Remember when President Obama was really struck down and ostracized for being associated with Reverend Wright's Christian church for 20 years. So he shouldn't be in Reverend Wright's church for 20 years and not saying anything to Reverend Wright after he said all this stuff about black liberation and things of that sort. And then they turn around the next sentence and say he's a Muslim. Now, I don't know about you, but I raised my eyebrows and I said, which is it? He's been sitting in Reverend Wright's church, and I don't agree with stuff Reverend Wright said, but he was sitting in Reverend Wright's church for 20 years, but he's a Muslim. So he's either a terrible Muslim or a confused Christian. I'm not sure. But these are the things that they were able to put out there, and the reason why it stuck is because some people, which are the people that they target in many respects, they are blinded by certain pieces of hate or tribalism, or they're just ignorant and their ignorance is being preyed upon. So that's not cool. So all that being said, I don't agree with everything that the president does, but I do agree with his core. And the reason why I agree with his core because he seems to allow logic to rule the day. And that's important for anyone who runs for office. It's important for anyone who governs. Allow logic and not ideology to rule the day. Now, let's talk about the logic, let's say, of the Iran deal. Now, many people have very emotional ideas of why they support or are against the Iran deal. But if you look at things logically and understand all sides of the issue and the cultures that are involved, then hopefully you can exercise some reasoning to understand why this deal, although not perfect, is probably the best deal. And most of us as adults understand that it's very seldom that we come across anything that's truly perfect. So, the Iran deal. Now, without all of the particulars here in front of me, I'm gonna try off memory to recall some of the key points. Now, in order to make or construct a nuclear bomb, there's a number of ingredients that need to take place. Okay, these ingredients include weaponizing uranium and plutonium, these precious metals that aren't easily acquired. They have to acquire these precious metals and chemicals and things of that sort from various places. They may have some they can mine themselves, but some of it has to be sent to them. But these different pieces and these ingredients have to be organized in such a fashion and held in such controlled environments and maintained at such levels in a very intricate manner, and then they have to be converted through an entire process that takes a substantial period of time in order to form one weaponized piece of nuclear material. So what the deal does, in short, is that it halts each of these different ingredients they need to make it. It halts the production of them, and it halts the process that's needed to take these ingredients and convert them in the necessary manner that will result in a bomb. Now, since many of these ingredients are rare, and since they're measured, let's just say for whatever reason, Iran decided to go covert and they're hell-bent on building a bomb somewhere else. Well, that means they will still have to touch some of these ingredients in order to build a bomb somewhere else. There's no way around it. And if we have accurate accounting of all these different ingredients and those the measurements of those ingredients change appreciably in any way, shape, or form, then they will know that it's been circumvented somewhere. And from what I understand, the entire process, it cannot be done without there being some sort of trace that something's taken place. Meaning that anytime there's an interaction between one ingredient and the other, then there's some sort of measurable effect that this reaction produces that is easily detectable by those experts that study this stuff for a living. Now, I'm sure it's a lot more intricate than what I'm describing, but you get what I'm saying is that this deal puts a halt to all of this for at least 15 years. Puts a halt to everything. And even more so, you have to think about it. I know we live within the boundaries of our country, United States, the greatest country on earth. But there's only so much we can do ourselves. The reason why Iran came to the table is because of the sanctions that the world community put on them with our urging. That's why they have all this money locked up in other countries. They weren't able to sell their oil, or they had their accounts frozen in other countries. So they didn't have access to the revenues that they had due them because their accounts were frozen in these other countries. In countries that aren't necessarily our allies, in countries like Russia or maybe even in China and places like that, they froze those assets. And that entire global freeze where the world community was with us is what led to them coming to the table with those stringent sort of sanctions on them. And that's why, one of the major reasons why they were willing to come to the table in the first place. So, all that being said, of course, Iran, they're a proud culture. I am an admirer of the culture. I have more insight into the culture than most people, and they are rightfully so a proud people. And the people and the government there are two different entities. Two different. The people are among the warmest and best and most well-educated people you will ever meet. And then governments, they have their own plans for things as well, and they're highly oppressive. So take all these things into account. Also take into account how people are the same across the globe. I spent time in France. I spent time in Australia, and everywhere I've been, and I know people from my world is an international world. My friends are international from all across the globe. People are people. Now, let me go back a little bit to when I said about how I didn't agree with George W. Bush, and I didn't agree with him in many of his policies. But let somebody hurt George W. Bush when he was president. Let somebody come at him. Let somebody, like what happened on 9/11, happen. Whether or not you are a George W. Bush fan or not, he's your president at that time, and we are going to strike back in one accord, which means that this type of incursion on our democracy, on our country, it fosters nationalism that may not have existed before. So, all that being said, even though the people in Iran and the government of Iran don't see eye to eye and they're highly repressive, do you think that if, for whatever reason, someone dropped a bomb in the middle of Tehran or Shiraz or one of these cities, that it wouldn't automatically make those people mobilize and protect their own and actually take away a lot of the progress that we've had in trying to get their leaders, downplayed and maybe open up their society a little bit more? Forget about it. That's what will happen. So keep that in mind. So let's go back to the deal. Like I was saying before, China and Russia, they froze their assets, and maybe some other countries as well. Now, if our Congress decided to undercut the deal, that will hurt us on multiple fronts, and it will hurt us for years to come. The reason why it will hurt us on multiple fronts is because, for one, it will take all of the power that our presidents, when I say presidents, I don't mean not just President Obama, but presidents in the future, it will take away their power to negotiate deals, because now every country that we try to negotiate deals with around the world would say, well, it's coming for your president, but your president doesn't have any power. So I don't care what kind of peace accord he decides that he wants to move forward with. We take what you say with a grain of salt because you don't really have power. You got too much stuff going on at home. You can't control yourself. That's one thing. The other thing is that now Russia and China, who don't really care that much about us anyway, now they say, okay, well, we went in this with full faith and understanding that we're going to help you guys out so we can get this deal done. It's not working. So you decided you wanted to pull out, so we're going to take away our sanctions against Iran, and so we're going to give them the money back. No, they're not going to trade with the United States, but the United States, we're just one country out of 200 or so countries in the world. So now their money will still be free, but the money in Russia, the money in China, because these countries want access to trade with Iran. Maybe some of them are doing it underneath the table already. So if we reneged on the deal, basically Iran will still get money back. It won't be the money that we froze, but it'd be pretty much the other money they have around the world. And what's a couple billion when you're talking about 100+ billion anyway? So they would get that back. They also won't, we won't be allowed to monitor any of the things I spoke about earlier in regards to the ingredients that is going to allow us to see whether or not they are trying to make a nuclear bomb. And so we're pretty much out of luck. We're out the pool. We're weakened in many respects. Our president and our diplomatic corps is weakened for years to come, not just this president, but any Republican president. Don't think for a minute that the Democrats wouldn't try to do the same thing. Okay? And then on top of that, we'll have Russia and China now trading with Iran. We're weakened in Russia's eyes because we can't do anything and our president can't do anything. We're weakened in China's eyes for the same reasons. They can go ahead and build nuclear bombs if they want to. If that's their aspiration, they can do it. So we're out. Unless we went to war. We don't want to go to war. I mean, come on. We don't want to go to war. We really don't. And this is where critical thinking comes into play as well. See, because many on the right, they again have gone to this whole idea of, you know, because Bibi Netanyahu doesn't want to. And I understand. I do understand. I can understand the distrust, but I truly believe that this deal is not based on trust. And I truly believe this deal is what's best for Israel. I believe that because I support Israel. I support Israel. So I believe this deal is what's best. That way we can keep eyes on what they're doing. Because if we decided not to keep eyes on what they're doing, then even though I do think Iran is a rational actor, it's an ancient culture. They don't want to be wiped off the face of the earth. And they know that this would be mutually assured destruction if nuclear war broke out in the Middle East. And they want to survive like everyone else. So it's not so much of them. It's because of you don't want an arms race in the Middle East. That neighborhood of the Middle East is so rife with old, crazy separations and grievances, and it's so much going on over there. And that's, ironically, that's the place where the original spiritual love comes from. It's the place where all three of the Abrahamic traditions of faith have come from. Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It all came from that neighborhood. And each of those religions are based on love and peace. All three of them are. But at the same time, that homeland for all of those three peaceful religions that were based on peace and love is an area of the world that's rife with tension and strife and war. So that's the last place you want to have some sort of nuclear arms race. You just don't want to have it. Now, even though, like I said, the Iranians probably wouldn't have a problem with it in using a bomb, because that neighborhood is the way it would be, then everyone else would want one too. And so now you got the Saudis, who are their natural enemies. Now they want one. And then, you know, maybe Jordan will want one. And maybe, you know, it's ugly. So anyway, Now you get the sense of why I support the Iranian deal. And we're going to have a Middle Eastern expert come in and speak about this. And she's actually going to go to Egypt to help monitor the elections in Egypt. And we're going to hear a lot about what's going on over there and the basic mood within the Middle East at some point in the near future. We only have a few minutes left. And so before I sign off for this first inaugural show, I want to talk a little bit about the email controversy with Hillary. Whoever's handling Hillary, they really need to step back and just let her be a person. Or maybe it's her. Maybe it's just that she's been in the spotlight and been so paranoid because of everything she's gone through in the 90s that she's afraid just to come out and say, listen, this is what I would say if I were her, of course. I would say, listen, I'm paranoid. I mean, I've been in the public eye for so long. I have to, walk on eggshells, and I just don't want to take the chance of somebody getting access to my emails. And so I just, it was wrong for me to use the same email account for business and personal. I did it out of convenience, but the reason why I had my own separate server was just because, I'm a president's wife, and we just don't want. I mean, what if I'm arguing with Bill? What if I want to say something about somebody I don't want them to hear? All these different things, and you expect for me to give over all that stuff to people that I know that if they found anything salacious, we'd be reading about it? No, so we have our own service just to protect our own information. Now, something like that, people will be able to get. People will understand that, but she's not that forthcoming and that would make her seem human. It would make her seem a lot more human because most of us can understand something like that. Most of us can see wherein you want to protect, your privacy because it's the worst thing in the world for that not to be the case. So anyway, we've touched on just a couple of the many topics that we're going to speak about during the course of this show. And as each show comes, we're going to be that much stronger. We're going to speak about Black Lives Matter. We definitely have to talk about that. Me as a black man and growing up the way I grew up, I can definitely talk about, and we will definitely talk about the things that span from Trayvon Martin to Mike Brown to Eric Gardner to people I grew up with. Bobby Murrow in Saginaw, Michigan, who was killed by the police with tasers, or even when I was a kid, Bruce Moore, when I was a child, who was killed by police. I think that the fact that we have iPhones and cameras on everything has exposed a lot more, but we'll talk about that at some point in the future. I thank you so much for signing on. I thank you for listening. I thank you for listening to this entire process as I bumble through a few of the topics and try to find my footing on this new platform. I hope you continue to listen. I hope you continue to give me inspiration and to call in or to send me off an email, which I got a couple of them while I was on break, and let me know what you like for me to speak about. And we can just grow together in this show, and hopefully we can all learn something. I'm not here just to espouse my views. I also want to hear yours. So thank you very much for tuning in to Focus with Ronnie Frierson. And I look forward to speaking with you next week. You can still email me at ronnie.frierson@gmail.com and put in the subject line Focus so I'll know. And also, do not be ashamed to call in. I know a few people who are nervous about calling in, but don't be ashamed to call in. I'm at 323-843-2826. Take care, guys, and we're going to sign off.